So now is where things get real. As you can see, I'm keeping the items that I created in the last lecture, even though you can feel free to get rid of them. I'm gonna delete them then. Alright, so you have my canvas. And what I'm gonna build in this lecture is the game over menu. And the game over menu is basically gonna be this canvas that when the game is over, instead of reloading the scene, we're just gonna enable the canvas and make a few modifications to our scene. And what this canvas will have, it'll have an image that displays how well you did, and it's gonna have two buttons, one for going back to the main menu and one for playing again. So let's get started, because this is going to be a rather long video. And to get started, I'm gonna create the image that will actually display how well you did. So game object UI image. And the image is actually the stars fill. I'm gonna choose preserve aspect, and I'm gonna center this element in the middle of the screen by moving it here, and it will very nicely snap to the center of the screen. Oops, have to scale it up, so do the whole process again. Alright. And now, so it scales proportionally to how much I scale the game view, I'm gonna wrap it up with these pickers here. In case I change the scale, they keep small or something. I want them to scale accordingly. So just drag these anchors here to wrap our sprite. And now they scale accordingly, which is a very nice effect. And what I'll do with this is basically I'm going to change its image type to be filled, and I want the fill method to be horizontal. And basically I'm going to do this when, for example, when I get a game over without hitting a single block, I want the fill amount to be very low, because you did terribly, so there are no stars for you. And in case you did, for example, half of the blocks, you'll get 0.5 of this fill amount. So the fill amount is basically going to be related with how many blocks you destroyed. And just so we have kind of a vision of the size of this stars element, I'm going to duplicate this, right click, duplicate, gonna change the image type back to simple, and I'm gonna change the source image to be the stars edge. This is nice. Okay, why did I duplicate it instead of creating a new one? Because it will be kind of hard to scale it up and to adjust all these anchors here. So a pretty simple way is to just duplicate that element and just change the source image, right? So now when I go back to this image here and I change the fill amount, it's very easy to see how big the stars can get, right? So we have this edge. And I make them independent just because this stars here, they have this fill amount. Okay. What I'll do next is kind of I want to place an image on top of my game view, so it gets kind of darker when the game over screen is on. So I'm going to create a new image, game object UI image, and this image I want it to render before any other element. And here you don't have this depth property or that order property. Here things are rendered in the order they are presented in the hierarchy. So for example, this image will render first, the stars, the edge will render after, and this image 2 will render after every other element because it's the last one. So if I wanted to render before, I just drag it, as being the first. It's kind of hard to drag it correctly, so you have to pay attention here. Now it is the first one, although it doesn't seem like, because any other thing that's here is white. So if I scale it up to be the size of my entire screen, what I want to do, I'm going to keep the source image as being this one because this is nice, but instead I want to change the color multiplier as being something that's black but has an alpha kind of an opacity here, so it gets darker from the original game tab, but it doesn't get as dark, right? And something else that we have to pay attention to is that when we scale up the game tab, this image doesn't go with it. So we have to pick a special type of anchor that will keep this image as being the size of our game view. So before I do that, I'm just going to make sure that it is aligned by dragging the scale to be in the borders here, so the image is the full size of my game view. So I need to pick a special type of anchor, which is this one. I'm gonna stretch my image both horizontally and vertically. So now when I scale it down, you can see that the image kind of follows, right? And I scale it up, there's this delay, but it still follows. And I'm just gonna rename this. So this will be the background. This will be the stars fill. And this will be the stars edge. What I'll still need is buttons, right? So we can decide where we go. And I'm gonna add a button for that. Game object, UI button. And the button will not have any text, so I'm gonna expand this and delete the text. But the sprite, I want it to be one of my custom buttons that I brought. So it's gonna be the play button. And of course we need to preserve the aspect because this looks just ugly. Scale it up a little bit. I don't know, maybe bring it down and bring it to the left. We can see how much we're bringing it to the left. We can snap it to the center of the screen here. And I want this element to also scale according to the scale of the screen. If I scale this up, you can see that it gets really weird here. So I want to move these cursors to again wrap up my element. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? If you miss something, it doesn't really matter. And now if I scale it up or down, it kind of keeps the same distance to the stars element, which is actually what I need. And if I duplicate this and I move it to the right side, I'm gonna also snap it to the center here, and I'm gonna choose the source image to be this close button, which will bring it to the main menu. It doesn't look like, but this is what I came up with, so it has to be this one. I'm gonna quickly rename this. This is going to be my play again button, and this will be my back to main menu button. So pretty self-explanatory buttons. And what I want to do now is basically I want to enable this canvas when is a game over. So to enable the canvas, I just have to enable and disable this game object. When I start my project, I want this to be disabled. But when I get a game over, I want to enable this. It's pretty simple. So let's do this in the game manager. So let's keep this enabled. I'm gonna go to scripts and open up game manager. And I'm gonna create a reference for that game object. So public game object, and this is my canvas. Alright, so one thing you need to pay attention here. My game over method is static. And I want to have a reference to a public element. So I can call a public element in a static function. A static function will need an instance of this class because all the changes to public attributes needs to be made with respect to a certain instance. So what I'll do here is I'll create a singleton. And a singleton basically is making sure that we always just have one instance of a particular class in our entire game. So a singleton is defined as public, static, and then the name of our class, the type of our class that we want to create a singleton, game manager that is, and I'm gonna call it instance. And in the start function, I'm gonna say that instance is going to be this instance of the game manager. So if we just have one instance of this game manager script in our scene, that instance will always be the singleton. And if you have, for example, a canvas attached to this variable, you can access it through the instance. And now inside this game-over function, we can do, for example, instance.canvas.setActive false. And what this will do actually true here, because we want to enable this element. So now that we have the singleton that points to an instance of the game manager, we can access this singleton and access a variable of that instance, which is made static here. And I need to make it static because I want to access this instance inside a static attribute. And make sure that you set the instance to be something. In my case, I'm setting in the start function the instance to be this instance of the game manager. And I'm going to say it again, since I will have just one instance of the game manager in my scene, I'm always assured of which instance will be my instance, okay? Because there's just only one, there's one option, and then this is going to be it. Okay, so let's clarify this by going back to the editor here. And I'm going to have to create an element to attach my game manager to, because I have to assign a canvas reference here. So game object, create empty, and I'm going to call it my game manager. Just drag the game manager here. Choose a canvas, so I'm going to drag canvas here. And let's go back to Unity and make sure that we start out with the canvas being disabled. So I'm going to do canvas.setActive false. And why I'm not saying instance now? Because I'm inside a private function. This is not a static function. Then I can just refer to my canvas without any reference, because I'm already inside of an instance. So if I go back to Unity and I hit play, you can see that it disappears, and when I lose the game, it appears. The problem is I'm still loading a new scene, so I'm gonna comment this out. And now if I go back to Unity and I hit play, there we go. It would be nice if we actually disable the apple. So if we destroy the apple, and if we didn't let the player control the platform. So to do that, let's add two references, one for the platform and one for the apple inside this game manager. So public platform and public apple. So what I want to do, I want to destroy the apple. So here I'm going to do destroy, and then the game object related to this script that I'm grabbing a reference to, so apple.gameObject. Make sure that you go to the instance first, then to the apple, then to the game object related to this component, because I'm getting a reference to the apple script, but I want to destroy the object attached to this script. So I need to access the component and then the game object. And to destroy the platform, you don't have to access the game object, because I want to destroy the script that controls the platform, right? So I just need to destroy the script itself. And if I go back to Unity here and I hit play, oops, first of all I need to assign these attributes. So what is this? This is the wood block creator. It doesn't have a name. So in the game manager I need to assign the platform. It's nice to have references to components, because when you choose this option to pick them, there's just one option here, right? If you choose to have a reference to game objects, you'll have all of these to select from. So now when I hit play and when I lose the game, you can see that the apple disappears and I cannot control my platform anymore. And if you go to the leaves bush, you can see that the component is gone, right? Because I deleted it, I removed it. And I also need a reference to this stars fill here, because I want to change this fill amount property in real time. And the fill amount is going to basically be the number of blocks I destroyed divided by the total number of blocks. Because let's say when the number of blocks I destroyed is 0 and the total number of blocks is 20, 0 by 20 is 0. When the number of blocks I get is 20 and the total is 20, the fill amount is going to be 20 by 20, 1. And when the number of blocks I get is 10 and the total is 20, 10 by 20 is 0.5. So you know what I'm saying here? This is basically an interpolation that's going to be based on the number of blocks I destroyed and the total numbers. So we need a reference to the total numbers here, and I'm gonna basically going to expose this attribute, which is the total number of blocks. And where can I set this? We have this woodblock creator script, and here I'm basically creating the blocks group. And the number of blocks is basically going to be rows times columns, right? If I have 2 rows and 6 columns, the number of blocks total will be 2 times 6, and that's 12. So I just need to go to the game manager, to the class, and grab that static variable called total number of blocks and say that this is going to be rows times columns. That's just it. So now I can grab a reference to that image. And you need to be careful here because images, buttons, they are all inside a different namespace of Unity. A namespace is basically something that brings functionalities inside our class. So we need to use another namespace here. And this namespace is called Unity Engine.UI. So this is the namespace that contains classes related to the UI system, okay? And now you can expose an image. And let's say this is the stars, that's just it. And now inside the game over function, we can just say stars dot fill amount, and the fill amount is going to be the division of points by total number of points, or total number of blocks. But this is not going to work because I'm dividing an integer by an integer. The result of that's going to be an integer. And what's the integer related to a floating point that goes from 0 to 1? Let's say the integer of 0.5, 0. The integer of 0.7, 0. I'm always going to get 0 fill amount unless points is equal to total number of blocks, and then I'm going to get 1. So to get a floating point out of this division, I need to convert at least one of these elements to a floating point before I divide. So I need to do, for example, a typecast. I can typecast this element from integer to float, then divide the points by this floating point element, and I'm going to get a floating point out of this. And now I'm good to go. So if I go back to Unity now, this should be working. Oh, there's an error. Of course, I forgot to access instance before. See, this is the kind of error you get when you try to access a public member inside a static function. Now we can go to the game manager, assign a stars, and there are just these options. Let's say this is the stars fill. And when I hit play, I'm going to play it a little bit just so I grab a few of these blocks. Game over. And you see that I get this, right? This is the total number of stars I get. And this video is kind of long, so I'm going to code the buttons in the next one. I'm also going to solve this bug. Did you see that? When I had a game over, this block destroyed out of nowhere. So we're going to deal with this in the next lecture. Konnichiwa.